everybody. Welcome to Roundtable Live for October 7th, 2016. My name is Baer, joined by Mathis Games, Rockley Smile, and a banana. Welcome, everyone, to the show. And Northern Lion is also here with us as well. How you guys
What's
doing?
the banana? I don't get it. What's the banana?
He literally had one right there. He was holding up a banana. You
missed
it.
I didn't see.
Real quick, though, you saw it flash
Very
by.
confused. I saw a quick banana.
Definitely not a very engaging joke for our audio-only listeners, but all the same, welcome to the Roundtable podcast for the... it's the first one of October of this year, which means it's Halloween for the entire month, of course. That's
Hell yeah.
the only
and then it'll be
important thing we've
Christmas
got.
starting in November.
That's right. That's exactly right. What's your typical Halloween festivities? What do you guys do at this age? What's the plan?
At this age,
Yeah, well, I mean, it's different now, right? Because we're not. There's a distinct line, obviously, for when you're kids, and then there's like the 13 or 14 where it starts to get a little weird for you to go trick or treating, and then like from then on until you have your own kids, then you're just like the designated candy provider, and that's the ultimate cycle.
Easy there, homeowner. If you live in a city center in an apartment building, you ain't handing out candy to anybody.
No?
No, he's walking around the hallways, knocking on your door, asking for candy.
I always thought that would
Missed
be like,
opportunity.
I thought they did
yeah,
that.
that would be like the optimal setup as a kid. You don't gotta fucking walk anywhere. You just walk between
No way,
the
son.
doors.
This ain't some Leave It to Beaver shit.
Did Leave It to Beaver live in a 30-story apartment complex in the middle of Vancouver?
Yeah, I think,
No, but if he did, he probably would have knocked on people's doors,
yeah.
asking
he's
for
a knocker.
candy.
I saw where that was going, but yeah, I remember that being the central plot to Leave It to Beaver. He usually had to deal with like the complications of downtown life, and like whether or not to join the local gangs. That was
Stoop Kid was like a real problem
I love
for
Stoop
him.
Kid, man. That was my favorite character in Leave It to Beaver.
There was a lot of like sledding issues and snow days. Yeah,
Good show.
Which,
it's a good show. I remember it too. Fondly.
just short term for like cocaine problems.
Right.
A lot of snowing issues.
Speaking of cocaine problems, I don't know why I wanted to say this, but we are really
That's what
close.
you do at Halloween as an adult.
I buy like a carton of hood milk, some eggnog, and just like that's pretty much my Christmas.
That's fair. This is completely unrelated to cocaine, but I did want to mention that thanks to Twitch Prime, we are actually really close to our little roundtable sub goal that I'm sure nobody was aware of because I never brought it to light. But we have 2 other emotes that we want to use or enable on this channel. And hopefully we can get... We're actually like 1 sub away. We're at 24 out of 25, so if one of y'all wants to show some support for the channel real quick, we can go ahead and get those other 2 emotes up on this channel and be good to go. But thank you
Hit
guys.
the lever.
Yeah, thank you guys for using your Twitch Prime subs on us, though. That was the focal point. Really appreciate that. But more to the point as well, talking about today's docket, we're going to be discussing Valve's addition of sprays back to Counter-Strike in the form of Graffiti, the Graffiti update. But unfortunately, there's some ill will being bred there as a result of their choice. The Washington State Gambling Commission has issued an official request to Valve to stop skin gambling via Steam, or to at least stop the facilitation of illegal gambling on that software. The Oculus Touch controllers have been revealed, costing about $200 for the pair of them. Oculus is also recommending you get an additional base station for full room motion capture. Mafia 3 on the PC is experiencing some issues. Mathis is going to talk to us more about that. We've also got Shenzhen, right? Shenzhen I. Yeah? Oh, you're muted. You're muted.
Ryan.
You're muted.
Ryan.
I thought you were being cute.
Do you like my inverse ventriloquism? What I was going to say is,
into what you're gonna say.
technically, in the pinyin romanization of Mandarin Chinese, it's closer to Shenzhen.
Oh, okay.
But
Well, that's valuable information. I'm glad you were here for that. Shenzhen I.O. And then, that's 2 of you, actually. Mathis and Nick both played the Outlast 2 demo. Going to talk about that as well. There's also one that I just want to bring to light right at the start of the show, which was that apparently parts of the Inside soundtrack, the game Inside, came from within an actual human skull.
Yeah, human skull, right?
Yeah, that's pretty neat.
I thought I heard one in there. Turns out it's true.
Yeah, that distinct sound. We all know. Actually, just doing that, it reminded
It's
me.
got a
I can hear
clickety
that.
clack in
Yeah.
there. Yeah.
There's definitely something going
Try
on.
it out.
Oh man, I love my favorite part of this story though is really just the sub headline, which is eventually all of the teeth fell out because of the vibrations. Which yeah, that when you're working with a human skull for sound production, you got to deal with that problem sometimes.
Such is life.
Yeah, that was
Wish it
pretty
was
great.
recorded in a giant pyramid too, just to like really cap it off.
Really, man, like it was actually pretty cool. You can hear on SoundCloud they have like the two separated files, the one that has just the pure sound, and then the After Effects version. With the skull processing added. It's just really...
Classic skull processing.
Look at a rack mount skull processing preamp. Just feed all my audio through that.
Audio jokes. Woo! Yeah, the
High shit.
the entire soundtrack apparently had a lot of those effects to it, so that was cool. Just wanted to note that. But anyway, off we go then into the core docket. Valve has reintroduced sprays with the Graffiti update. The Graffiti update adds the popular in-game text or picture spray. It's kind of like what Overwatch does with the sprays. In fact, it's basically exactly what Overwatch does with the sprays.
Same.
But of course, the Overwatch sprays are just a built-in thing with preset images that Blizzard is in complete control of. It sounds like Steam or Valve used to allow folks to sort of create their own customized graphics that they could use the sprays with in-game previously. And people got out of hand with it, of course, as people tend to do. And luckily, people, of course, back then had the option to turn sprays off as well in case they were offended by them. But those went to the wayside. Those were taken away. And now Valve has reintroduced them in the form of the Graffiti. And this is a new consumable item. Players get to Graffiti or have a chance to get Graffiti as a result of free weekly drops for ranking up. You can also buy graffiti boxes that are created by Steam community artists, and you can also buy individual graffiti patterns from the Steam market. So the gist of this here, of course, though, is the fact that there was more or less a feature of the game taken out and then reintroduced as more or less a microtransaction. And while there's other variables at play here, that's essentially what has transpired. It's sort of a big red flag, isn't it?
I think it probably ties in with the next thing we're going to talk about. Perhaps they're looking for ways to remonetize content that they've just lost, trying to kind of fill a gap.
Ah, yeah.
And, you got to make up a lot of money for the gambling stuff. But and I'm not even sure how much, if anything, they took away from that. But it's just like a new way to bolster the economy of it. And since you mentioned that the sprays are like Overwatch, I feel like we should also qualify that, we know it's been a Source feature since the beginning of Source.
Right.
And Team Fortress 2 was probably the thing that I think made it the most popular. But, it's Overwatch was just a calling card for people that have just entered the world of competitive FPS.
Indeed.
So, yeah. What do you guys think about the whole thing?
It's like honestly just about the dumbest idea for a microtransaction I've ever heard in my life. Because generally I take the opinion that if you have cosmetic microtransactions, as long as they don't affect other people, I don't really care. But at least right now, I've seen some stuff where, there's transparency issues where you can spray, on a window, which, of course, is supposed to be transparent in both directions. And it makes it so that there's actually, an occlusion, so someone can hide in the transparent window, but hidden by the spray from one side, but they can see out with 100% transparency. So... I mean, that stuff will probably eventually be fixed, but it's actually sprays as a consumable, I think, are silly. Sprays as a consumable with finite uses is just it boggles my mind.
Yeah.
For me personally, I'm like, this is the stupidest microtransaction in Valve's history, at least.
Yeah, I probably fall on the same side as you with that, and I feel like all they have to do though is make as far as tactical advantages, just make windows not spray-onable.
Yeah.
Right.
That makes sense.
But I bought the argument for why they were like CSGO doesn't have sprays. One of them is that it's distracting. Another one is that people, if you have custom sprays, they could put, horrible stuff or distracting stuff in there, and then that would take away from it. But the fact that you have to actually, pay for each use is just extremely silly to me. But
it's very difficult to defend. I'm grasping at straws here, trying to conduct a devil's advocate argument for this, but it's just sort of a blatant fuck you from very many perspectives here. It was, I don't understand how to justify it. There's just There's just a lot of animosity to be bred here, I think.
I think all it is just we want some more money. Like, there's no upside.
Yeah, that's what it comes across as.
Yeah.
Well, that sucks. I'm trying so hard right now, man. Like, there's got to be more meat to this, but it's a bad move. Why do
The
it?
far-reaching implications are that the CS:GO community will bolster Valve's overall income, which will help them make a better Vive version 2, and then the VR community will become strong. I'm just making shit up. I don't know. Maybe.
It just strikes me as kind of like it is an erosion of goodwill, which is kind of silly to me. Like, some of the stuff, like crates, there were people who have problems with crates. But in the end, I'm like, I don't care if I get shot with a dude who has like a great skin for his M4A1 or something like that. That doesn't bother me. And it gives like a little bit of extra like emergent gameplay if you're the kind of person who's into that, you know, like Skinner box basically of seeing how it works out when you open a case. And even then, like, they added music, and the music was really expensive. So like if you were the MVP for a round, you could have like a custom soundtrack that would play. It was like $8, and you're like, oh, that's a little expensive. But for 50 uses a paid spray that could be like, I'm not sure if it's $2.50 to open, but it's like 5 cents every time you press the T key. That's actually a little ridiculous. Just to put like a little icon, like a little GIF on the map of like a dude giving the thumbs up. You're gonna pay 5 cents to give a thumbs up digitally in the game.
That is like an investor's wet dream, man. The thing you just described. We're gonna charge them 5 cents every time they input this one button in
Next
game.
up, we got limited use emotes.
Yeah. Oh boy.
In Overwatch.
That's on the way.
When the PlayStation 3 was new and that Warhawk game came out for it, I remember there was talk that they might do consumable power-ups, like consumable missiles and consumable everything that you could pay for. And after that didn't happen, we were like, oh, what were we thinking? They wouldn't do something that stupid. This is kind of that. Just had to wait like another 10 years or so.
I'm finding what little I can here in the form of the graffiti boxes, you know, being driven, a lot of them by community artists. And that is sort of a nice thing, right? The Valve is facilitating a way for artists in the Steam community to be able to create and display their work via the graffiti in the game. So that's, I mean, there's a lot of people playing Counter-Strike, so that could actually be maybe a semi-legitimate source of revenue for folks that may be able to garner enough popularity for that. But it is still, you know, that's a berry among the thorns, and there are a lot of them in this story. Yeah, it's
in the end, it still sort of comes down to like, if people want to buy it, that doesn't really bother me. But even still, I'm at the point where I'm like, come on, Valve. Like, it's a transparent money grab in a way that actually offers essentially zero value to the game. And I think it offers like such little value to the player as well.
Yeah.
To just be like, you know, there's a little dude doing this icon. Like that. It offers so much less than like the feeling of like, check it out, I've got this cool skin for this gun, which is still pretty low, but I don't know. It just I haven't found anybody that is pro this decision. I would rather just have no skins in general. I like having a world without skins in that game. Or it's not skins, sorry, a world without sprays. Yeah. But I don't know. It's usually a warning sign for me when even I'm like pro-consumer on an issue, I guess. When even I'm like, this is too far for a company to go, and, you know, even if it... But the other thing is, like, everyone goes, oh, it's just to make money. But who's buying this? Everybody hates it. It just seems like a lose-lose.
With Valve, I mean, this is a silly thing that's going to come out of my mouth, and I know it, but how much more do you need? Valve has got to be doing, like, a lot better than most companies these days. They've got the Dota 2 fucking fan-fueled prize packs that obviously, you know, a portion of those sales are going into Valve's pockets already. They've got a couple of the most popular games on the planet at the moment, a few of them, I think. Got Dota 2, Team Fortress 2, CS:GO are all in their, you know, domain. For a company like this, who is clearly is not in need of a means to get out of the red, there's there's very little that can be done to validate this sort of maneuver. So it's a burning of goodwill in a circumstance where very little things that you can do as a company are going to piss a lot of people off. This is one of them.
Yeah, I think there's also another element in Bear. Check Skype real quick. But I think the other element is the... Oh,
There's audio bleed coming from your end.
Headphones down.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
The bigger implication that sort of bothers me about it is I think it sort of serves to normalize that this is going to become an acceptable thing for other people to implement too. And it sort of further pushes back the line of like how little value can you provide and ask for money for it. So once Valve does it, I feel like a lot of people are going to say, all right, well, this is where we go now. Let's do that. That's the new thing.
Yeah. Very true.
I still disagree with that. I forget what game we were talking about. I think it was Ark. I still disagree with the argument that it always, anytime anybody does it, it creates precedent, even if it's Valve. But I also feel like players are doing everything that they can to put up a barrier to this. Like, everybody that plays CSGO is not happy about this. Like, nobody's stoked. Some people are like, I don't care. Some people are like, I'm unhappy. I'm not sure what people are supposed to do beyond that. Like, CSGO as a game is a great game, and it's already owned by, like, 7 million people or something like that. So I'm not really sure what more you can do to push back against something like this, except not buy it, which seems extremely plausible to me.
Yeah. Well, I think that's how we round that out, I guess. That's Counter-Strike Global Offensive Graffiti. Just don't do it. Just don't buy it. Here's a Band-Aid, but don't do it. Don't buy it.
Can we pre-order it, Bear?
No, man.
I want to pre-order
Don't pre-order
some spray paint.
the consumable sprays off of Valve's marketplace. All right? If we can avoid that, I mean, let's just take baby steps, I guess, toward eventually dispelling the world of pre-orders. We just say, all right, let's just avoid this one. Let's just not do this, and then we'll, progressively get up to let's never buy something before we see it. There we go. Next up, the Washington State Gambling Commission has ordered Valve, more stuff about Valve, to stop skin gambling via Steam. Sent a letter to Valve to co-founder Gabe Newell ordering the company to cease and desist the popular form of virtual currency gambling related to its game Counter-Strike Global Offensive. This is, of course, tying in with news from early January, or not January, July, where Valve actually issued cease and desists to those companies listed, including CSGO Lotto, CSGO Lobby, CSGO Wild, a whole bunch of skin gambling websites. Valve ordered to cease the activities of those sites. And now Valve is being told themselves, on the flip side of the coin, to stop actually allowing that to happen in the first place. So this seems like it's probably going to be the end-all, be-all as far as these stories are concerned. I think we were all sort of speculating whether or not something like this would happen, and it turns out the hammer has been thrown down against Valve, which is sort of where the buck stops, I think.
I hope the buck stops.
I hope it does too,
it's really just like it needs to stop. I'm glad that there's like something legally happening about it.
Mm-hmm.
It just sucks that it was allowed to go on for. I'm just curious on like why did Valve let it go on for so long in the first place? Probably because they were making money on it.
Yeah. Nobody called them out.
Yeah.
What does Valve get from the gambling though? Just like
more people buy crates.
Do more people buy crates, or do more people? I mean, I guess where they're getting the cut is like the 15% that they get on every Steam Marketplace purchase, right?
More or less, yeah.
But I'm just trying to there's probably a causal line that we can draw. I just don't want to throw them under the bus
by
without.
Valve.
Well, of course, yeah.
all
I'm
of
just
it.
saying, most of these sites work by you gamble your inventory, like pieces of your inventory, and then that gives you like a weighted roll of a dice, and the more that you put in, the higher your investment you put in, the odds of you winning are better. So I guess just increased demand from gambling causes people to buy more off the marketplace,
Right.
and I guess they're making money off that.
Yeah.
And it increases visibility long term with people that are getting like fanatical about wanting things. I think that just encourages people to stick around longer potentially.
See, I think now we don't really have a lot of trouble. I think we prefaced this story well by sort of portraying Valve as the villain. So let's just go further down that road. I feel like this sort of indicates to us that were Valve not benefiting directly from the gambling all this time, they more than likely would have taken a lot more direct action to sort of prevent all these things from happening, because it's not a good look for them, you know? Like, they got to be aware of that.
But I disagree with that. And the reason I disagree with that is because I still think of Valve primarily as a developer, publisher, and distributor. I don't see them as like an arbiter of what should be happening necessarily with their games once they're out into the public. So if I put myself in Valve's perspective and I'm like, okay, there's an API that exposes your CSGO inventory that we've allowed to be out there, it doesn't necessarily have to be used for gambling. Like, that was one use, but you could also maybe write a program that hooks into that API and then displays it in a forum signature or something like that. Or you could do anything with it. The world's your oyster. So I can understand from their perspective why they're like, hey, people are using our API for things that are maybe a gray area, but as long as it's not actually illegal and we're not being encouraged to stop, it's not really our place to step in and say that that's inappropriate.
That's fair, yeah.
I guess
I don't know. I
legally,
could see both sides of that. I mean, they are aware of their demographic information. They know who's playing the game, and they've got to see some sort of a link between the amount of gambling going on in a younger age, which should at least send up a flag for them to maybe do more research.
But is
I don't know.
does any company have do you even have an ethical obligation to stop that? Like,
I'm not sure.
The way I see it is, if you're making a gambling site and marketing it to kids, that's an unethical action. But as Valve, somebody taking your framework and using it to do that, I'm not sure that it necessarily, like at what point does Valve say, like, how do they administer every use of their API, I guess, is what I'm trying to get at here. It's like they made a tool that people can use, and you can use it for good stuff, and you can use it for stuff that is slightly nefarious. But if I'm Valve, I'm like, let the government handle that and tell me whether or not it's okay. I'm not going to waste my resources trying to shut down things that I don't even have any control over. Like, if I made the site and the government wants me to shut it down, I'll shut it down. But if somebody else is making the site using my tool, I don't think I have a responsibility until somebody steps in and tells me.
I think I can agree
now
with you
they
there,
do.
yeah.
So what are they going to do?
There's so many different parts to it as well. Like, so what's interesting here, sort of a comparison I'm making in my mind, is like, so you know how every time a new Magic set is distributed, they have to account for all of the different parts of the various sets that preceded it, right? So you can't, when you're making new cards, you got to account for like all the different abilities that could be cast against it or with it, and you got to try to balance that as you go, and then the more things you add, the more complicated that becomes. And I think that's sort of what happened here with Valve, in that they want to facilitate all these different things, such as the ability to trade with your friends with in-game items, the ability to automate those processes to a certain extent, and then the ability to, like, give items value and actually allow people to, pay money for that stuff. All these different systems are in place, and, obviously when you put two and two together after the fact, you can see, oh yeah, people are going to abuse the hell out of this by making these bots that are going to run all these complex programs based on all these different criteria that they've allowed us to pass and make millions of dollars, right? Like, that's what's already happened. So I guess Valve's place in this has constantly been changing as a result of the fact that all those things were just added on step by step and not necessarily like all introduced to facilitate it immediately. Yeah. So it's like the question that's posed is, what is Valve's responsibility in all this? I wonder if maybe, I mean, I try to say this, but I don't think it's really possible. Maybe to be better about implementing things like that, and try to anticipate those sorts of possibilities in the future. Although, again, that's, I don't know, that's really just sort of positing whether or not they're aware of all these issues in the first place.
Let me construct a metaphor that I think is equivalent.
Okay.
And you can agree or disagree if it's equivalent. The way I see it is, it's kind of like Unity, who makes the Unity engine. They license their engine to an indie game developer, and that indie game developer makes a game that's incredibly tasteless, like offensive to everybody, but also somehow still wildly popular, and makes a ton of money. Unity gets a certain kickback from sales of the game based on the use of their engine. But even they're like, we're not really for this. Like, we're against this game. Does Unity have a responsibility to be like, we should stop this tasteless content from getting out there? Or is Unity like, hey, they're using our engine to produce something themselves, and maybe it's having an impact that's negative on society, but is it our place to say, like, you guys can't buy this, you guys can't play this? I think now, like, when a watchdog steps in and says, like, hey, like, legally, you can't do this anymore, that's an obvious, like, black and white issue. But until then, like, does the person who makes the tool have a responsibility for the job that's done with the tool?
I have another metaphor, which I think might be a little different, but I wonder if it's also equivalent, and that's, think of the gold system in World of Warcraft and people that make up bots to farm gold and then sell it on the gray market for real money. Like, where does that fall into the same thing? Because Blizzard doesn't approve of that, and they do what they can to try and stop it, but they're just always one step behind. Yeah. Valve never even took the active role of trying to stop it until they were basically, shown that it was a problem.
Yeah, and that's actually, like, that's also extremely relevant just because, well, I was actually trying to get at this in my point, too, about the fact that step by step they've failed to take action regarding the automated bots that most of these gambling websites use. Like, Nick, that's actually a good parallel because Valve is failing to really do anything and have in the past failed to really do anything to deal with those. Like, they don't allow that. As part of their policies, they do not allow the use of automated users.
The two differences that Blizzard still does try. It's expressly against their terms of service, and they're not making money off of it.
But it does set a precedent that you've created the opportunity for a gray market, so you should enforce that, right? Or does it not?
That's where my issue comes in. Is that, like, Blizzard making a game and having it possible that there's, like, the ability for a secondary market to emerge elsewhere. I don't think that they have an obligation to take foster care of that secondary market. And especially, I'm coming from the perspective of somebody who's like, if I made a game that got wildly popular, I don't want to deal with the headache of, like, what people are doing to change the economy of that game. Like, maybe at some point, if it affects the actual game itself, and you're like, oh, people are never going to actually go through the grind because they can just buy boost to get themselves to the max level for 10 cents because somebody's, grinding it out there for them. But I don't know. I think, like, when it becomes a legal obligation, it's an inarguable issue, except in the court. Before it becomes a legal issue, I don't think they have a responsibility, honestly.
Would you go
in this case?
Would you draw that analogy out to even include things like Mojang is not responsible for what's created in Minecraft, or just like even any engine or platform that allows for the creation of materials or media within it? The creator of that engine should not be responsible for the secondary content.
Didn't Minecraft not too long ago, within 6 months to a year ago, shut down all those pay-for-favor servers?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So they did step in and say no more.
But they were never, like, court-ordered to. They just sort of...
No, because the majority of the people who play Minecraft are underage to be doing that kind of stuff, which can that carry over to CSGO? Or the majority of the kids who are gambling kids and not legally allowed to do so?
Well, everybody on Steam was born on January 1st, 1911, right? So it's all irrelevant at this point.
Or today's date.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I mean, in the end, it circles back to the same question. Like, sure, Mojang did it. Did they have to? I mean, obviously they didn't have to. Should they have? I don't really have an opinion there. I'm not intimately familiar with the issue of paying for favors for Minecraft servers. But, I mean, for me personally, I'm not even saying that Valve doesn't have a responsibility. I'm just saying I don't think it's clear until there was legal precedent that they had a responsibility.
Mm-hmm. Looking at, like, exactly what the Washington State Gambling Commission says may actually help to open our eyes a little bit here, too. So let me just read that verbatim. Skins continue to be used as consideration for illegal gambling activities on third-party websites, which Steam has attempted to address. The Gambling Commission expects Valve to take whatever actions are necessary to stop third-party websites from using skins to gambling through its Steam platform service. This is the wrong section. I thought this was going into detail about what they had actually said. Okay. Valve Corporation appears to have rules against the use of bots in its user agreement. It's not strictly enforced its user policy preventing the use of bots and continues to knowingly allow third-party websites to conduct gambling transactions through its Steam platform. And the bottom line is skins were the currency for what seems to be the largest underage and often fraudulent gambling ring in the history of gambling. It's been abused on every level and continues to be abused. Washington State took a leadership role in this decision, blah, 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 blah. So there we go. So that was not offering clarification as I had hoped it would. But it's clear that, like there was something... They explicitly stated what the issue was, and, like Valve, I think, does have a level of responsibility once we know all these different factors that they, could be reasonably held accountable for. Yeah, I agree with you, though, in that there is still some gray area in determining what exactly their responsibility was prior to that. All right. Cool. Next up on the docket, GameSpot asks me to validate my age, and then Oculus Touch controllers revealed during the Oculus keynote, priced at $200 a pair. Nick, how do you feel about it, man?
I swear there's some sort of continuing narrative that you guys just want to make me feel as bad as possible.
No. You are the Oculus guy.
I know, I'm the
it's
Oculus
not my
guy.
fault that all the Oculus news is bad news. I'm just relaying it to you.
You have an ethical and moral obligation not to keep telling it to me. Well, the thing is, so the Oculus Touch controllers weren't, revealed. We knew about them before the Oculus even came out, but it was revealed very recently that they're going to be $200. And that is sort of enlightening news that I wish I would have known prior to buying the actual Oculus headset. And I don't know if it was strategically set up this way. I'm going to say probably not. But if it was, that's kind of scummy. $200 on top of a $600 purchase, which would have added up to the price of the Vive.
Yep.
Doesn't make me feel so good when I'm not enjoying the Oculus as much as I think I could have potentially enjoyed the Vive. And it comes with those things on day one. I would have had more options right away, and it would have been the better supported one, and it wouldn't have been linked to Palmer Lucky, and it wouldn't have been linked to Facebook, and I wouldn't have to deal with the annoying application, and I think you get where I'm going with this.
Are we on the same page as a group in that I feel the stagnated release of the different parts of the peripheral were sort of a misplay, right? I don't even know if they were actually able to...
I don't think they did it on purpose. They didn't... I don't think they strategically let's wait and get these touch out soon. I think it was, Vive is coming out, we need to compete.
Mm-hmm.
These are not ready, so we're just going to get the headset out now and have people... They have to wait. They could have waited, but then
they couldn't let the Vive
share,
have it by themselves, right?
That's what I'm saying. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
They can't just have the Vive just go out there by itself and just own a massive amount of the market without competition. So they needed to compete. And then they decided to push the Touch off. It sucks that the Touch is that expensive.
Yeah.
But, yeah, they definitely scrambled. And I feel like that could be felt with the whole shipping problems with the Oculus. When people were ordering Oculus, how much it was delayed and people didn't get theirs and it took forever. That just screamed rushed to market as quickly as possible. So this is probably just more leftover of that.
And by pre-ordering my Oculus, they were so kind as to allow me first access to the Touch.
Pre-order?
So I'm allowed right now. I can pre-order for only $200.
Lucky you.
That's it.
Lucky me. I'm thinking about just jumping ship at this point. I know plenty of people have told me to sell the thing. I don't know if I can get behind just straight up selling it, but I think I'd rather not go $200 more in on it and just save that money for a Vive for the next gen or something. I don't hate the Oculus. Like I've said 100 times, I don't think it's awful. I just don't think it's what I could have had if I would have bought the other one. And, it functions the way I intended it to, the way I wanted it to. It does pretty much most of the stuff I wanted it to. There's not a lot of games for it, and I don't use it that much. I think the Vive would have been better.
We are definitely still in the early access phase, or not the early access, the early adopters phase for VR. I think it's probably going to be 1 or 2 more years before we've got, a solid games base, and then
I've burned off my VR enthusiasm for the time being. I'm back at the point where I'm I'm glad I have it because it means that I don't have to get it. Mm-hmm. It already exists. The barrier to entry has already been crossed.
Yeah,
effectively.
That's tech for you,
such
man.
a great selling point. I love having it because that means I don't have to get it again. That's
Yeah, and I'm
I played the shit out of everything that was worth playing the shit out of.
yeah.
And I played to boredom at that point, and now there's nothing new to keep me coming back and putting the headset on. That's
like the first time you're so enamored.
yeah.
It's like being at the start of a relationship, and even if like the person you're infatuated with like shit their pants in front of you, you'd be like, "Oh, that's so cute." Whoa, she doesn't care
Probably
what
not
people think
that
of her.
specifically.
Yeah, I'm being a little facetious, but you know, you go like, "Ooh, there's a game where you can pretend to have a lightsaber, and then it like shoots a laser at you, and you deflect it, and you're like, okay, that was
This
fun."
was wicked worth $10.
Yeah, exactly.
And
And then
get
like,
sued and the game disappears from your Steam library. What?
well, like 2 weeks later, like another 6 lightsaber games and like 10 ping pong and 40 mini golf clones have like all come out, and you're like, okay, I don't need to do like another tech demo for mini golf. I don't need to do another tech demo for ping pong, you know. So and we're in that period now where I'm like, all the really sweet stuff is gone. We're just gonna wait for cool stuff to come out, and hopefully, you know, in a year or so, it starts to. But I'm definitely like less enamored with VR now than I was a few weeks ago.
This is a great preface to our next segment, wherein I discuss how enthusiastic I currently am about VR. More on that later.
I'm actually still enthusiastic about it. I just wish I had the thing that let me express my enthusiasm properly.
Yeah.
I'm not. I'm with Ryan in that I'm less enthusiastic because I played the shit out of it, but I'm not like. I still think the Vive is every bit as good as I praised it when I first got it. It's still an amazing piece of technology. It's just there's nothing left to play. There's nothing there anymore. Like Ryan said, you can play like 7 different lightsaber things and
At least you had some games though. I didn't really get any ever.
That's
I got
unfortunate.
scraps.
Have you?
See, if I would have just had my bed just roll into the wall or something, it would have been a different story, because then I would have room to dick around with the standing games. I just don't have the option, so I thought Oculus would be better since it didn't have the ability to do room scale.
With the
and
Oculus,
now they're giving us that ability.
you can spend another $80. You can have it even better, man. It's great. I
280 total for everything additional.
Yeah, so you got the 2 touch controllers. Which have you used the touch controllers? Any of you guys?
No.
No.
I had a chance to at PAX Prime or PAX West, I guess, and they are actually pretty nice. Like they felt like basically a smaller version of the Vive controllers now that I play with those, but it was it has everything you need, and I sort of just like that it's this little non-intrusive device as opposed to like holding a full-fledged controller or something. It really does add pretty well to the overall Oculus experience, so that's nice at least. But $200 for the pair is that leaves a bad taste in my mouth.
Did you see the PSVR, how you can like see your own hands in the game?
No, I didn't see
I thought that was like a really neat thing.
Yeah, but like a lot of the stuff, like I watched a little bit of the Giant Bomb PSVR stuff. Some of the reviews have been pretty positive, but the most enduring, consistent, like positive thing I've seen is like it's easy, it's comfortable, and it's cheap. The other thing I've seen consistently from people who have used Oculus and Vive a lot is it really triggers motion sickness, and a lot of stuff seems to struggle to keep with you at like a frame rate that doesn't make you want to throw up. Like Jeff Gerstmann apparently has like an iron stomach for VR. Like he could go on roller coaster sims all day in the Vive and Oculus and have no problem. And when he took off the PSVR headset after, I forget what he was playing, but he was like, I'm gonna be sick. I'm actually like nauseous. So I think that's really worrying. But it does have a smaller buy-in, and it seems like really easy to get it set up. But at this point, I think like my perception is you just bet it all on the Vive and just wait. And hopefully talented developers are going to make something for it that's truly robust, and that'll inspire more talented developers to do that. But in the meantime, it might take a while.
Well,
if that's true that the frame rate sucks, that's like the worst thing that could happen to it, because that's what made me sick as well when I was playing Metroid Prime, was just the 24 FPS moments.
Oh, I'd vomit so fast.
You've got to stay at 60 or more for real.
Yeah.
You just can't handle it.
I thought it's 75 is like where you want it. And I thought that PSVR, the Sony said no games can come out unless they can maintain a steady 75.
But maybe it's a tracking issue, like
I mean, I can see that happening. Like if it loses you and it snaps around a lot or something.
Beta problems, even maybe.
Well, people were saying like the the environment shakes, which is something that happened in Pool Nation on Vive, actually. Like, everything just moved up and down like 3 or 4 pixels on like an oscillating sort of wave. And it was, you'd be looking around and you'd be like, I'm swimming. Like, I'm going to die. I'm getting sweaty. But, yeah, so I don't know, and that could be the developers as well. Like that could just be that game. But I mean, I'm not super. At this point, I'm like, if you're gonna buy a VR product for which there's probably not gonna be a whole lot of support, you might as well just buy the Vive, or you should wait maybe.
Yeah,
Just don't buy anything and wait for the next gen Vive. I don't see the harm in that.
Yeah, I mean, everything I've read about PSVR says it's better than the Gear, but it's worse than the PC. It's like a middle ground, which is what we were saying. It's probably going to end up being...
It's like 100% what I expected it to be. It's just the entry level for console gamers, basically, for the VR system.
If it's that like easy to trigger motion sickness, that thing, I'll probably put it on and just immediately vomit. So I can't. Not going to happen.
Well, let me segue this into my personal experience with the Vive, because I just managed to get my hands on one pretty recently. HTC Vive right here. Let me get it. I'll just to prove it. Just, you know, I'm not bullshitting you guys. It's actually here. There it is. I got the real deal, not some knockoff. There you go. You got the official Vive stamp of approval. So, I have I've checked out in the Vive. I've played the Lab, which was the one that comes bundled with it. That was by itself awesome, man. Like, I'm so glad that comes with it, because that thing is so well made. Like, it had the Valve seal of approval. That is such a great experience.
It's a great like VR museum kind of thing. You know?
Yeah, man. Like, so there's 8 different labs in the lab. You've got anything from like a really basic display, 3D display of the human body, where you can like investigate separate sections, and you've got your little wand that you can use to sort of parse through the body, which is kind of neat. You got visual postcards, which are again another really simple thing where you can go from location to location and sort of bounce around and check it out. And then you've got things like the slingshot, which is just its own sort of mini game built into the lab, which, man, I want to give Valve just some random praise here now that we've been shitting on them for the first hour or so. They're hilarious, man. Like, they make funny games, and the slingshot is funny too. Like, laugh out loud funny. Like, a lot of the main gameplay in the slingshot mode is you have these cores, which are just these little circular robots that you put in the slingshot. You pull them all the way back using your wand, and you let them go, and you just fire them out into this big warehouse full of crates. But they all have like their distinct lines, and it's so good. It's like, I am the snuggle core. Do not snuggle me, or I will explode. And it's just, it's so good. So I wanted to say that as well, and I really enjoyed the slingshot mode. They also have that the archery, which is like tower defense archery, which was so fantastic. Like, it's super satisfying. Every part of it, the tracking, the one-to-one tracking is unbelievably perfect. Like, especially, I actually had to tweak it a little bit as well. I'll say that, like, the initial setup was actually a little bit of a pain, just because you got to get the boxes aimed at just the right angles. You got to make sure that every reflective surface is covered. You got to make sure that you've got the exact proportions necessary. And it's a surprisingly big space too. Like, actually, I heard a lot of people say this, but the amount of space that you think you need is probably smaller than you actually need.
Yeah, you can get away with a pretty small space.
And then
you want to know how small my space is?
Yes.
There's my bed. I have.
Oh, you're just gonna point it out your dick.
Yeah, I know, right?
Yeah, there's my bed.
And ban.
All right, sweet. Yeah, the lab is exceptional. Really enjoyed that, and then the robot repair thing was cool as well. I just that made me that got me super hyped. I don't know if it was meant to, but I got hyped about the idea of playing Portal within VR. Which, God, if they just put that out, I'll be so happy. And then what else did we do here? I got a code for Space Pirate Trainer. Actually, did you guys check that out? Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah, that's probably like, apart from, I hear the gallery is what you played. I saw.
I did,
but
yeah.
I hear that's like maybe the definitive experience. Apart from that,
Job Simulator's up there in my opinion.
Job Simulator as well. I really like Fantastic Contraption, but Space Pirate Trainer is the one that like is really, really like repeatable. Like, I can play that for like an hour at a time, which is kind of special for VR.
Yeah.
I think.
It's great. Yeah,
You always feel like a badass.
You do,
whole time.
man. Like the music is great. Just the overall feel to it. It's so intuitive as well. It just feels like, oh yeah, this is what I've been doing as a space pirate for the last 10 years. I've been doing this forever.
Like I said, well, and I was talking about VR before, and I'm sure you feel the same way. How crazy it is that like your brain is like, yeah, I'm just holding guns now.
Yeah,
Yeah.
That's what these are. These are just guns. These are my hands.
To the polar opposite of that, do you guys ever feel like, I guess what I could only describe as a phantom VR syndrome when you've been playing it for a while and you come out? Do you ever get like, so when I was playing for like an hour or so earlier today, I got out, and then for like a little while after that, I was weirdly like experiencing the grid around me, like very cognizant of it, and like especially when I would close my eyes, it would be like I would struggle to not see this virtual space around me again. You didn't ever feel that way?
You mean?
Nope.
I've had an experience when I was watching a lot of those VR videos because they were kind of grainy and low res, and when I took off the helmet, I was like, the world is very high fidelity now. Like,
Yeah.
Everything feels like it's got way too good textures on it.
Yeah.
The Vive went HD.
I have
It made
had
it,
that.
like feel
actually.
wavy
Yeah.
for a minute.
I'll give that. Yeah, coming out and being like, oh, everything looks really crisp and clear. This is my world. Okay,
Yeah.
got it.
Then
Yeah, VR resolution is not very high. I know it's kind of hard to put that across, but it doesn't look as good as PC gaming normally does.
yeah,
Or as the real world.
right.
Or that.
I will say though, the lab actually had another one, another lab called Secret Shop or something like that, and that one was another one that really impressed me too.
Yeah, that's a Dota 2 shop.
That one made me really excited for the future of interacting with NPCs in VR, because just like talking to that guy and watching him walk around, like I wanted to like shake his hand and stuff, like actually be a part of the world, and I think that's not too far off, like having the basic interaction, I'm pretty sure, is just like the next thing coming. But I'm also excited about the potential for how far we can take, the full range of human motion as opposed to inputs, right?
I'm not saying that you're wrong, but the secret shop like bored the shit out of me.
Yeah, I mean, it's not by itself. It's definitely not the most impressive thing, but I did like it. Go ahead.
It was like my fourth day having the Vive when I finally got to it, and then I went in and he's like, "Don't touch anything while I'm gone." And then you're like, he leaves, and then you're like, "Well, I'm gonna touch this." You touch something, and it goes like, "Whoa!" And you're like, "Yeah, okay."
Did you do the? Did you teleport to the different places?
Yeah,
Yeah?
yeah. I teleported all over that room, all over the secret shop. You like you like touch a torch and it goes off, and then it goes on, and you're like, "Ooh."
Yeah, no,
my hand vibrates when I touch it.
I mean, I'm
Pretty cool.
with you there. I mostly just like that spurned the ideas in my head of, oh man, imagine like how much further we could take this. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
that was like the what I got from it. But
I'm amused by stuff like that. Honestly, that's just.
Have
I
you
have
played
fun
Budget
playing with
Cuts?
toys.
played what?
Budget cuts?
No, that's out.
The
No,
demo.
there's
You can
a
get the
demo.
Oh, the demo. Okay, there's a demo. No, I haven't played the
Oh,
demo
it's
yet.
really good. It's like an hour demo. Like it's really good.
I was looking forward to playing it.
That's one that like confused me a couple of times.
Mhm.
Like because you have to like lift things up and like you can poke your head in, like look around, but you have to be like crawling around so you can like bop your head into the ground as you're like,
Yeah.
I'm gonna peek through the nope, the floor is there. Never mind. Like that got me a few times, but it was really really immersive.
I
enjoyed that
will
a lot.
definitely have to check out the demo. Yeah, that was one I
Oh,
was
it's so
actually really
good.
looking forward to playing. There's another one that is coming out. Actually, might already be out, called Audio Beat. Did either of you play that?
Oh yeah, Audio Shield.
Audio
Shield's
Shield.
good.
Yeah, that
No,
label.
audio.
Yeah.
Wait, you mean the one where you play a virtual drum set, or do you mean the one where you block balls?
Block Balls. Which one is that?
Okay, that's audio.
Audio
Shield.
Shield.
Yeah. Okay. Mm-hmm.
I played like maybe like an hour and a half of that.
Yeah, it was fun.
It was just kind of like, it's
It's a
good.
rhythm
yeah.
game. Yeah.
Yeah, like the problem for me is that like, it's fun for like the first like 4 songs, and then after that I'm like, there's not really much room to learn, I guess. Like in Rock Band, you play and you're like, I suck, and then you play for another hour and you're like, I'm a little better, and then in 6 weeks
Yeah.
you're like, I'm a god. Whereas in this, I'm like, as long as I can see the things, like I can do it, and it's not that tough. But also sometimes I don't think the the algorithm catches the music properly.
Ah.
And I kind of feel like I'm just arbitrarily like waving my arms, and I'm like, the actual spirit of the music is not really in keeping with the beats you're having me keep right now.
Yeah,
But
that
seemed fine.
That would be like the primary turnoff for me, because that's sort of like the infatuation I have is doing the motions to the beat, which is I love rhythm games. Like I played shit right there, you know. Like I love Guitar Hero and Rock Band, so I felt like I would be totally into that. I also checked out Tilt. Oh, sorry, what?
I was just going to say, I feel like there's a little bit of a disconnect still with some of the motion stuff where there's so much flailing you might necessarily have to do that it like kind of makes the options limited for what the developer can implement in the game and have a fun mechanic.
Right.
So you're playing up like, okay, you can move, cool, and then you've seen that and you're like, all right, but can we make the gameplay more complex? And the answer is no usually, because there's only so much the human body can really do successfulully. So I feel like sometimes those are the cases where if we just had a gamepad, like the options would be so much more open, silly as that sounds.
Yeah, it's true.
No, it's right. Like, one thing I think a lot of people don't actually consider until they think about it is that with a gamepad, the amount of actions you can do is, like, endless. It's extremely complex. You've got 3 different ways to input direction, like 11 buttons, some of which can be held, some of which can be held at half or 25%. You can tap, you can hold, you can input sequences. And then in real life, I mean, you can do anything, but to have it mapped to a digital environment is largely, at least right now, just coarse stuff, like put your arms in this general space or try to like do this gesture or something like that. That's pretty much it. So,
yeah.
I mean, I feel like the disconnect for some people with VR is like you're picked up in the real world and you are put down in a virtual world where you can do anything, but actually it's still just looking at what you're doing with these. And you got like a grab,
Meaty
and
fists.
you gotta move, and you got like 2 big cubes.
Yeah.
The camera's seeing these big cubes, and it's like, you know, what can you do with cubes? Not a whole lot yet.
Yeah. The dream is once you have enough granularity that you can actually touch things with your individual fingers and move like really small objects precisely. That'll be when we're in the next gen, like the proper VR that I wanted since I was a kid.
Yeah.
We're almost there. Like we're in the sort of simulation version of that, but we haven't taken away the training wheels yet.
Right.
We'll see it soon, though. Probably within our lifetimes, I hope.
I also checked out Tilt Brush, which is exceptional.
Super fun.
Yeah, just so great, man. Like that is such a nearly essential VR experience
so
right
jealous.
now.
I really
Go
want
to if you go to the Vive subreddit, you can feel really bad about your lack of talent. Saying that. You see people who have painted like whole houses, and you can just walk through the house and shit. You're like, I hate you.
I
'cause
wondered how
just like stick figure. Oh, sweet.
I wondered how quickly people would master it. Turns out, yeah, just right away. Oh, that sucks.
Oh, yeah, there's people with awesome talent. Like I remember seeing the video of like old Disney animators drawing their characters
that's so
in
cool.
Tilt Brush.
Yeah.
I'm like, that's awesome.
Mm-hmm. And this has like the power of Google behind it, so you know it's gonna be okay. It may not be supported very well depending on whether or not they prioritize it, but it is still an extremely good product out of the box. So
They may abandon it in 8 months.
right, never
I'm
know.
just waiting. I'm starting to realize that I think my ideal Vive game is like Zachtronics making a puzzle game in the Vive that basically subverts the need for an engineering degree. Like making a game that is like that level of like programming intricacy combined with some physicality in the Vive, and then if you beat the game, they're like, if you just take this screenshot to like your local community college, they'll at least give you like a year's credit.
Yeah, you want the robot repair lab, but as a real thing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's like my platonic ideal for VR right now. It's like,
Mechanical
you know,
Turks, but for college credits.
basically like build a car in build a car in the Vive, or like disassemble and reassemble this engine in the Vive, or build a computer in the Vive, or something like that. That's like that's where I want that to go.
That can't be far off, man. That's going to be out like holiday 2017. I'm
Online
sure.
VR courses.
Yeah.
Just wait till
That
we
would be
get
so
the
fun.
motion glove controllers. So
Yeah.
it can map all of our fingers as we
And
move.
that's what I was hoping for now. I wish we just jumped right to that part.
Yeah, I'm curious if it'll be in our near future or not. I hope so.
The first time that we have the VR glove and I do this to myself is gonna be
man.
I'm gonna blow my fucking mind. That's gonna be amazing.
I already like with playing Elite Dangerous in VR. and having the stick and throttle, and it moving exactly as I move. It's like, yeah, that's my hand, because you see the hand gripping the stick and stuff. And you're just like, oh, that's actually my hand there, and that. All right, this is really weird. It's awesome
for sure. And then I played. What else did I check out? I did a little bit of.
Check that dungeon one.
Which one was that?
I'm trying to think of the name.
Vanishing Realms.
Yeah.
No, I didn't check that out. What is that one?
I've heard that's pretty dope.
It is really good. So you're going through a dungeon as like a hero, and they give you like a sword and a shield, and you're fighting skeletons, and like the skeletons are your size, so it's like really kind of horrifying. And you get like a bow and arrow. It's a pretty typical dungeon crawler of like you're the fantasy hero, but because everything's to scale, it's crazy to sword fight and like block the sword of the skeleton and counterattack. You look like a fool, like when someone's watching you, but like in the game, you feel like a badass. You're like, I'm a trained swordsman. This is great.
Hell yeah, man.
As weird as it sounds, I think what I want out of VR as I exit the honeymoon phase is games, and I'm not disparaging the descriptions that we've used, but is games that are described as being good without actually requiring describing the gestures you do to play them. Because whenever people talk about like Vanishing Realms, they're like, Vanishing Realms is really good. Like you have potions on your belt and you grab one and drink it. And I'm like, okay, that's cool, but that's not really fun in and of itself. Like it's just a new way to get the input.
If it wasn't a VR game, it would be boring as shit.
We're in the realm right now of it being sort of like something mapped to a Wii remote, and it's because the language that we have is too coarse. Like you said, we need more detail, and we need a commonality among all these games that we can take it for granted that if you do this, X will happen, right? And once we get to that point, they can start to build off of that, and new people can bring new ideas into it. It branches out until it's a huge thing. So it's too early yet.
Yeah. And the last big one I actually tried out was the gallery, like Ryan mentioned. This is going to be an episodic release, apparently, but it's more or less... This is like how I was describing my experience with the Oculus version of Abduction. This is sort of the sort of game that I expected to be really enthralled with in the Vive, and turns out I was. I only played about 45 minutes of it because I actually, like, I played to the point of physical exhaustion, which was surprising to me. I didn't ever actually expect that to happen, but I was like, okay, I want to keep going, but, like, I can't wear the headset anymore comfortably, so I'm going to stop doing it now. But... That was a pretty cool experience. I really enjoyed the gallery, and I think I'll probably play quite a bit more of that. Cat Cam was fun, too.
Sweet.
Yeah, Ryan's stealing your thunder with an adorable Ruka in a box right now.
I can't compete against that. It's pretty good.
Oh that was Tomo, God. Too. They both got a box?
Tomo's like, fuck, what's happening? Fuck.
Oh, no. Watch out, he'll punch you.
Hey, buddy.
I know, that was great.
To the audio-only listeners, Tomo is in a box. That's what you missed.
Great.
But yeah, that's been my Vive experience. I am seriously enjoying it. Like I've been playing it almost every day. Actually, I got it for a project, so I'm sort of like in need of training. So I've just been kind of getting used to the motion capture and getting used to the area that I have to operate within, I guess. And I've really enjoyed it. I am looking forward to a lot of the different releases coming around as well. There's such an influx, especially like in the latter part of 2016. I've noticed there's so many more VR game companies popping up. A lot of big names are going into VR now, and it's really exciting. Even people like Justin Roiland, Squanch Tendo, they're getting into it, man. Like that's pretty fantastic. I'm really looking forward to see when they get...
My only worry with his first VR game is that it's just, I hope it's not, but it seems like it's going to just be a reskin of Job Simulator.
Yeah, it kind of looks like that.
And that, I've already played Job Simulator, and it's fantastic, but we'll see. We don't know.
Right. But yeah, it's looking good, man. Looking forward to more VR stuff. Let's get into Mafia 3.
Yay.
Out on Steam. Out on PC today. Actually came out yesterday. $60. Steam reviews are mixed. Mathis Games, how do you feel about it?
So, just disclaimer, I got my code from 2K. Didn't pay for it. So just you get that out there. So, Mafia 3 is an open world Mafia game. If you played any of the other Mafia games, it's that style, whereas it's all about the inner workings of the Mafia and usually a revenge tale. Blah, 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 The PC launch was kind of a mess. Not in your typical way. So it's locked at 30 frames per second, which is a lot of people are bitching about, understandably, because it's definitely noticeable. You can't fix it in any INI files. It's just not possible. It is 100% locked. It's supposed to be going to be having a patch this weekend to fix that. Man, I just don't really like Mafia 3 so far. I played it for about 5 hours all told. I played it for like 4.5 today so far on stream. Mm-hmm. And I spent a lot of that time breaking the game. I really felt like I was pulling a Nick, where I was going out of my way to test the boundaries of the game and found out the boundaries are like literally inches from you, and you can quickly find them and break them. The look of the game is a little disappointing because it's really ugly in a weird way. There's this weird smudge effect, blur effect that you can't get rid of over the game. And it's not motion blur. You turn that off. I messed with whatever the limited settings they give you, and it doesn't go away. And the game constantly looks like it has this weird smudge filter slapped on top of it. And whenever you move, it just looks blurry. It just looks like this perpetual motion blur on the game itself. It's all the colors are really like muted. Unfortunately, it doesn't like bright and it doesn't look great. And obviously the 30 frames per second is kind of a problem as well. The problem I have is the fact that it's open world, and the game, it feels like the developers were not prepared to make it an open world game. The AI is awful. The AI is god awful in the game. You can go up on the street, and you know in like GTA 5, you start fighting somebody, they take a few punches, they'll get up, they'll run away, they'll scream, they'll call cops or whatever. They act relatively realistically for what the world of GTA is. Cars will peel out and just like run from you. In Mafia 3, you can go up to a pedestrian and like push them, and they just fall over and they're unconscious. They're out. Every pedestrian goes out with one hit. You punch them in the chin, they just go down. You punch them in the stomach, they go down. You push somebody, they go down. And nobody reacts in the game at all. They just keep walking. So I was like, okay, this is really weird. Let's mess with this a little bit. So then I started taking the bodies that are unconscious on the ground and lining them up on the streets and seeing what would happen.
I'm watching you.
Sounds like Hitman, what I did.
Yeah, so I'm lining them up on the street just like in a row and seeing what the cars did. And then the cars, just some of them would like really like jank out and like try to back up and go around them, and then eventually the AI would just give up and just run over the bodies and just hit them and just keep going. Until at some point,
this poor little old woman came up and she was like ready to go, man. She saw you taking down all these pedestrians, and she was just, no, come on.
No, she went down. Eventually the cars stopped. One car got stuck on a body and started making crashing sounds. And all of a sudden, I was on like a intersection when I was doing it, and all of a sudden the AI for the cars just breaks, and every car just stops moving. They just, middle of the road, cars stop. Not just where the bodies are, like everywhere. They just all stop. And I just start throwing bodies, and I pile bodies, and I pile bodies, and I pile bodies. And one out of every like 10 people, like this is a feature of the game, is like if you commit a crime, people are going to go call the cops. Not really. Like 1 out of every 10 people will be like, I'm calling the cops. And there's a big sign that's like, this person's going to call the cops. You run over to that person, you just push them, and then they go unconscious. And then nobody tries to call the cops. And they just stop trying to call the cops. It's awful. At one point, the cops did show up, and all I had to do was run behind a building, and I just sat there. And then within 30 seconds, the cops went away. They're like, meh, okay. One cop car got glitched, like the AI died, and it just sat in the middle of the road with the 2 cops in the seat. I took out my gun, shot each cop on the head, took the cop car, drove down the street, parked in an alleyway. Within 30 seconds, the cop's like, hey, he must be gone. He's gone. That's weird. As this and then I picked up the cop bodies, and I start walking down the sidewalk, and the people are just like, he looks like he needs a doctor. I'm like, yeah, he's got a bullet in his head. He definitely needs a doctor. Oh, man. So the open world AI is hot garbage. The AI in missions is equally hot garbage. So you can attempt these different missions in a variety of different ways. Go in guns blazing, or you can go in stealth. I'm playing the game on hard, by the way. Just put that out there. Mm. I went in stealth, and God, the AI just doesn't know what to do. Because you can go around a wall, and you can pin up against a wall, take it for cover, and you can press a button, and you can whistle. and the whistle will like attract the nearest guard. So you whistle, and there's like a pack of 3 guards, right? One comes over, he's like, huh, what's over here? Comes up to the door, prompts you to press B. It's not like your guy just grabs him and pulls him around the corner. Dude gets up and steps out in the doorway, stabs him in the jugular, pulls him around the corner, and then throws the body. And the other 2 guards are like, that was weird. Whistle again. Here comes the other guard. He's like, derp, 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 derp. Press B. You like stab him in the face, drag him around the corner. Other guards just standing there like, weird. That's strange. Whistle again. The guy comes over, sees a dead body, and he's like, I never liked him anyway. He gets close. Literally says that, stab him in the heart, drag him around the corner, drop the body, proceed to next room. Just start. You do that through the whole mission, and nothing happens.
That's just old Splinter Cell strats, man. Back when the AI don't care none.
They don't care at all. It's awful. And one of the missions has you outside. It's like you're not in a building, you're in an outside complex. And there's a gate that leads into the complex itself, or a fence. You can lean up against the fence, and it's not considered in their territory. And you can whistle, and one of the cards comes up. You stab this guy in the neck with your knife, bleeding everywhere. You dump him on the sidewalk, and the people are just walking by. They're just like, man, he's a dead guy. That's weird. That's strange. And then you just keep doing that, and nobody reacts. Like, the world just doesn't react. Other issues are like the world seems relatively unpopulated. There's not a lot of things on the street. You quickly find the car limit. When I was doing that body piling thing, cars eventually just stopped coming. Maybe like 15 cars before they stopped spawning. And the draw distance is awful. Like, you're driving down the street, and within 30 feet in front of you, you can see the cars. The cars
how
do
is
that.
this game this bad?
The cars do that weird. You know that in No Man's Sky when you're flying into the ground, it does that grainy phasing thing.
Yeah.
That's what the cars do.
So
you're driving down the street,
in.
the cars are coming. They don't even pop in. They grainily phase in front of you, and they drive by. It's just like. It was just fun, just like breaking the AI as hard as you possibly could, and it's so weird. It's such like a disconnect when you brutally murder somebody and drop him onto the sidewalk, blood everywhere, and the civilians are like just whistling and walking, and they make comments like, "He looks like he needs a doctor." I'm like, oh.
I
Awesome.
watched a segment of you just like carrying somebody on your shoulder. That was like a clip you showed with us. Yeah, there were like 5 people that you walked by. He needs a doctor. He needs a doctor.
They don't care. It's weird. And I was piling. At one point, I take the bodies and I try to pile them on top of the car to see if they freak out. They didn't do anything. Like, you just throw them on top of the car. I had a pile of bodies in front of the car. Nobody gets out of the car. Nobody tries to call the cops. The cars don't move. But take out a gun, fire a bolt in the air, everybody freaks the fuck out, and everybody just starts driving all over the place. It's so broken.
It sounds like they just didn't have the time to implement enough systems to make this actually seem like a living world. So they cut it at bullets, and that was
it's so weird because like that's one of the biggest like selling points for this game. It's going to be an open world like Mafia 2, but like more busy and more things to do. When it just And at least in Mafia 2, like, the cops would stop you if you were, like, broke a traffic law. Like, they went for that kind of realism. In this one, cops are brain dead. They just don't care. They even give you a warning, like, if you break traffic laws in front of cops, they're going to chase you down. I went whipping by at 105 miles per hour by 2 cops through a red light, and they just ignored me. Like, or, you know, they just don't. Shoot 2 cops, take their car, 30 seconds, they're off your ass.
So you talked about mechanics this whole time. What is there to actually do, though, in the game?
So the meat of the game is very, if you ever played the old Godfather games, it's very much like that, where you're taking over these like prostitution rackets, drug rackets, or whatever from these enemy gangs, and you're taking them under your name and distributing them to one of your 3 mob bosses. And that's like the meat of the game, all while you're basically taking them away from the main bad guy to get back at him as a revenge tale.
So you're the boss from the very beginning. You don't have to like work your way up.
The first hour is like tutorial to show where you were, how you got almost murdered, and why you want revenge on this guy. And so you start at the bottom and kind of like you're taking things away from him. But it's a lot of that. It's a lot of just taking rackets away and then distributing them to your employees and just doing that a lot. And that's the thing too. Like, I liked the Godfather game back in the PS2, but you can't get away with just that kind of level of base gameplay anymore.
So how does that map to the actual gameplay then? So are you just going to different territory points, killing somebody, and then walking back to the mission?
So like one of the first ones you do is you're taking over a prostitution ring. It tells you what you need to do. There's like 2 people you need to kill. You can kill one of them or you can kill both of them. If you kill both of them, you get more money. If you only kill one of them, you get less money, but you still do it. And basically you cause enough damage to draw out the boss of that ring, and then you get a mission to go kill that boss. Once he's dead, you take it over and you hand it off.
It sounds like shitty Crackdown.
Yeah, it's similar to
without
Crackdown,
any of the fun parts.
Yeah.
I mean, it's stuff you've seen in open world games time and time and time again. And it just sucks because the PC port is clear. It feels like it's just a direct console port, just like directly from the console to the PC, to the point where putting graphics on high and comparing them to low, they almost look indistinguishable. Like there's almost no difference outside of some shadows and some volumetric lighting effects. Other than that, the models look the same, the cars look the same, everything looks the same. And it just feels like a huge waste because it sucks because the game didn't get review copies put out, and that immediately was red flags for people. And now it's like, oh, okay, this is why.
I had a lot more understanding for people not giving away preview code or review code to press before this year, but it's sort of rubbed me wrong pretty much in every instance that it's happened in 2016, where if they don't give press copies, it's probably broken to some extent.
The one counterexample to that is Doom this year.
Yeah, I say Doom. Doom's the only one.
Where like they didn't give press copies, and everyone was like, "Of course they're not going to give press copies. It looks like shit." And it came out, and everyone was like, "This is awesome." But yeah, no, I would agree that for the most part, it's a bad sign when press copies aren't given out, especially when it's a game or a company that like always gives out press copies.
Yeah.
I mean, I got Civ 6 like 2 weeks in advance.
I was actually going to say, I was going to cite that exact example that, 2K has given Civ 6 to people already, but for Mafia, well, I mean, it's easy to see why they wouldn't.
Yeah.
They're like, we know that we're going to get roasted over this like 30 FPS stuff on PC, so at least we can like not have to deal with it for one more day.
I will say the story so far is great. The voice acting is phenomenal, and the music is awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Like those 3 things are great about it, but everything else just feels shoddy and just not ready. The options they give you as a PC player to mess with graphics are super limited. There's like very little you can do to mess with it, and that sucks.
It is interesting. It's interesting to note that they are basically deploying the 60 FPS patch over the weekend. So why
That,
not?
to me, makes no sense.
Yeah, why not delay it, right?
Yeah, I don't understand.
I just don't understand, like, and this is obviously like a mega project from a software standpoint, so maybe I'm just missing something, but it seems like the kind of thing that you would prioritize, like, ASAP if you're going to put this out on PC.
Yeah.
And if it only takes you, like, another 4 days, like, I know, like, people are very concerned about things like crunch. Like, you don't want your developers or anybody on staff working, like, 20 hours a day for 6 months before the game comes out. But, like, this should get in over getting, like, the Creedence Clearwater Revival license for, you know, Down on the Bayou or something. Like,
I have one point to that I don't know if is actually right, but I had tweeted something similar to what you had just said about how silly this is. And someone replied that there's a lot of times there's contracts that require parity amongst console and PC. So they literally have to wait until the release and then they can patch it to not breach the contract.
Really?
And that was the most plausible
That's
thing
shitty.
I've heard that might make sense, but I don't know if that's right either.
yeah.
It's just another
People
angle
are
I never
also
thought
wondering if like the FPS is tied to the physics in some way, which could be a problem. I don't know, man.
of.
It's just
The old
like
Dark Souls.
yeah, exactly. It's just and the thing is like the 30 FPS thing is noticeable, like really noticeable. I hate it. But it's the least of the game's problems. Like the game is just not that good. You know, like there's a lot of mechanical issues with the game.
Yeah.
And it sucks because I feel like, again, it's another game that had to be open world for the sake of saying it's open world. Because the game does not feel like it is at all ready to be an open world game. There's the fact that every civilian just goes down with a punch. Nobody reacts. Nobody tries to call the cops, which is something they touted as a major thing in the game. Nobody does it. And it's just a problem. And when they do, they have to run to the nearest phone because no cell phones in the 60s. And they give you a big icon like this person is trying to call the cops, and you just run over and be like, you're an idiot. And then they just fall over unconscious.
Yeah.
Like, it's just not ready to be an open world game. And the AI, even in on hard, in missions, like the shit that's supposed to provide a challenge is dead. Like, they're just dumb. And there was another problem, this very small thing. Bosses, unless you stealth kill them, are like bullet sponges. The very first boss I went against, I shot him in the head with my pistol 4 times, and he was like, I'm still going. Well, everything else in the game goes down with 1 headshot. But the bosses, I'm like popping him, and he's just like, no, he's like,
they're high on meth.
Yeah, like
The only option.
he's just shouting at you and stuff. I'm like, that's just dumb.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's got so many problems.
That's I had sort of that same issue with The Division when it just sort of, it takes you out of it when you see that your gun is about as effective as a gun ought to be in a futuristic environment, and then there's this dude that can just for some reason or other take 4 full clips to the face, and that's just how it is.
I think we're past the point where it makes any sense for a human being to not go down from a headshot.
Yeah.
Like, the gamification of that concept doesn't apply in this time now.
And it's like it's a design issue that it seems really lazy to just be like, every other human being dies in 1 hit, but this guy doesn't die in 1 hit because he's a boss.
Yeah.
Like, it's much cooler to do things in the way that like a lot of Mark of the Ninja bosses did it, where it was like it was really tough to get to the boss. But if you dropped on top of them, they behave by the same rules that every other enemy in the game does, which is you cut their head off.
Yeah.
You know, like they're dead.
Yeah, exactly. And it's just, and like, the more I think about it, the more little things that were happening. Like, if you get caught, like the enemy, and then you can kill all the enemies who see you in the mission, and then you sneak around a building, they still kind of know where you are. They don't really lose you. And at one point, the dude hurled a Molotov cocktail from the other side of the map up and over a building and landed like right on me. I'm like, what the hell? Like, the dude just straight up fucking just like, he had sniper throw, landed a Molotov on my head. I'm like, Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
But it's just a mess. It just feels like a mess, and it sucks because I really wanted to like Mafia 3. I was excited for Mafia 3. I remember seeing the E3 presentation and being like, but again, obviously they're showing you a very scripted presentation, but being excited for it. And I mean, like, this looks like it's going to be the Godfather game I wanted back when the PS2 era. And it's not. It's not at all.
Based on all the things you said, even if all of those glitches weren't there, it sounds like the gameplay loop itself isn't even fun.
It's repetitive.
It sounds like there's no core game that's even enjoyable to it.
It's your typical take over territories on the open world map with like you're taking over and whoring out prostitutes and dealing out the
It's the Ubisoft
cokes.
formula mapped to a different time period again.
Yeah. And you have that very minor management aspect where you're trying to balance your underbosses and making sure they all get territory equally because they will up and leave you. And like, that's interesting, but it's not interesting enough. And from what I can tell so far, it's not like difficult to keep them all appeased.
Makes sense.
Yeah, it's a disappointment. I will continue to play it because I'm really enjoying breaking the game. It's hilarious to me.
Yeah, I'm excited to play it now based on everything you said. Not because I want to enjoy the game, but because it sounds fun to break.
Yeah, I think Baer was probably showing it, but I have like a 15-minute clip I took from my stream today and put on my channel of just me piling up bodies and the AI just doing nothing.
Yep, that was good.
Cool.
All right, well, Mafia 3 is currently available for $59.99 over on Steam. Another game available on Steam today is Shenzhen I.
Yes.
Ryan, what is Shenzhen I?
So this is the new game from Zachtronics Industries, who you will know for something, probably. You know them for Space Chem, the game where you make reactors that create molecules, basically, compounds. Or you know them for Infifactory, which was like where you stack blocks to create contraptions in an automated process, like a 3D Factorio, but not survival sandboxy. Or you know them for TIS 100, which was a puzzle programming game where you, with an assembly programming language, complete some operations, basically. Shenzhen I is an evolution of that, where basically you play as an engineer who works at a Chinese electronics company, and every day you get these emails that come in, and the emails are like, hey, we need you to make an esports moving sign, like an animated electronic sign. So what you have to do for that is there'll be like 3 animations or 5 animations, you have to program the way that the animations will come out in sequence. And what you basically are doing for that is manipulating numbers and creating loops that, behave in very sensible ways, and you're building you're connecting microcontrollers to one another and passing data between them in order to accomplish these objectives. It's basically a puzzle game where you're moving stuff back and forth, but you're doing so digitally. And kind of the hook for me is that it also has, first off, I think it's pretty intuitive and pretty accessible. Compared to something like TIS 100, this actually feels a little bit more gamey, and the interface looks really nice. But beyond that, it comes with like a 30 or 40 page PDF. So, and the tutorial is basically just it assumes that you know what you're doing because you're playing the engineer/programmer. So it just goes, okay, here's what you need to build. Then you have to go and look in the reference manual and be like, okay, I want to add 6 to a number. How do I do that? And you go through this period-specific book that is kind of retro-futuristic from the 1980s, and you go okay, well, the way that you do this is you store it in a variable called ACC, and then you just type add, and then the number you want to add, and then you pass it to the output port, and it goes out there. So you have a lot of Papers, Please style, okay, I need to do this, how do I do this? And you refer back to the reference material, you take the reference material, learn the syntax, put it back into the game, and then do it yourself.
Mm-hmm. So
Sorry, go ahead.
Is this a game that would maybe translate well into real life application?
Possibly, but if people are I want to play a game to learn how to program, this is not it.
Okay.
This is a game that I hate to say this because I think that the thing that people are going to look at this, and from the description, they're going to be why would I want to read books while I play a game? It's not really like that. It's you're referring to a table to get a number. It's like, in Keep Talking and Nobody Explodes. You have a panel of symbols. You don't know what to do with it. You refer to the book and you go, okay, here's the order that you press them in. It's a little bit more like that. In that the gameplay is kind of an abstraction to teach you some programming-related concepts. It's not homework, but if you see it as homework, you're not going to like it, which is also fine. It's obviously a niche product. But it's definitely not something where I'd be hey, if you've never programmed before, get this 40-page fake PDF and learn syntax for a language that is 30 years old and also doesn't exist. you should really just start learning Python or download Visual Studio or something like that, because in a language like C#, when you type, you're basically typing for every string in strings, and it's English. In this, it's TEQ space ACC 0 plus it's pretty esoteric at first, but if you have some programming experience, particularly with logic, for loops, writing conditional statements, fairly basic stuff in programming, that knowledge will translate here easily. All you need to learn is the syntax. You don't need to learn hey, what is a for loop? What is an if statement, et cetera, et cetera.
Right on. That's the answer I was looking for.
Tubular.
The thing that is also awesome about it is that it's a puzzle game where optimization really matters. So the game is strongly if you can beat the levels, you're already a genius. You're a smart person. If you could, I've played for 2 or 3 hours, and I've beaten 5 puzzles, I think. And then one of the puzzles I beat, I can't beat again. I did it at 2 a.m. last night. I woke up and tried to solve it this morning on video and was I don't know what the hell is going on here. This is ridiculous. So it's tough is what I'm getting at. But the optimization is really important. Every microcontroller you put on the electronics board to make a product has a cost associated with it in terms of the actual money that is required to produce it, because you're basically working on an assembly line, or you're designing something for an assembly line. And then every action that microcontroller takes costs more power. So the more complicated your program and the more microcontrollers you use, the more expensive it is and the more power it uses, the worse your leaderboard ranking is. So you'll finish a level and be whoa, I'm on the far right of the bell curve for everything. And then you look to the left of the bell curve and you see these Bill Gates level John Carmack geniuses that did everything with 1/4 of the cost and 1/4 of the cycles, and you're it encourages you to get better. And I see a common complaint, by the way, which is why not just program a game if you're going to play a game with programming? Mm-hmm. I want you to know it's the same attitude that you give people shit for, where they go, well, why would you play a game where you Why would you play Call of Duty? Why don't you just join the army? Why would you play Madden? Just go outside and throw a football. It's a gameplay abstraction of something that is fun to some people. Like the way it's the same as like Sokoban games, you know, where you push around a block in a tight space and you've got to manage that space to get the block to the exit without like getting yourself wedged in a corner and stuff like that. It's like that. If you enjoy these kind of like programming concepts, it's a gameplay abstraction that is a little closer to real life than probably the way that a lot of games do it. But for me, if you like this game, this is going to be like your game of the year. People are going to lose their lives in this game. I've already seen people in this game have programmed like Pong, which is actually outstanding when you see what you're actually given. You're given like a little board, 2 microcontrollers, or 5 microcontrollers, and someone made Pong. It's apeshit. That's actually crazy.
Nuts.
Play the output of it?
Yeah, you can like move. It's
it's playable.
It's not a great Pong game, but yeah, like as you play more, you can unlock other components. So you can unlock bigger microcontrollers that can have more complexity. You can also
inputs.
There is an input device that's like an NES controller, and there's output screens as well that are like I think 8x8 screens. You can't model anything too crazy, but like, and I would caution you, like I don't want to sell it on those high order things because you're not going to make those in like 10 hours. Yeah. You're going to like that's going to take forever to get to that point. But I think for a lot of people, if you like that kind of like logical style of puzzle solving, you'll get to the point where like I have a number here, I need to get it here, and now after an hour I figured out how to do it, and that's like I am the smartest person in the world.
Yeah.
Until you see the leaderboard, and then you're like, I'm an idiot.
I want to say, like, that's got to be fucking crazy to think that, you know, normally when you look at a high score leaderboard for a video game, you're not thinking, oh my god, this person's an actual genius, or this person has, you know, great physical merit. But a leaderboard for a game like this, these people have got to be engineers, scientists for NASA.
These games have like a really large following amongst people who are like
smart.
and particularly people who work in programming or computer science, because I will say, like, I tried to play TIS 100 last year, which is the last game that they made, and I was like, this is way too hard for me. Like, this is fucking impossible. And then playing this year, I got through like the first 5 puzzles with the growth that I've made in my own programming knowledge. And I'm like, I'm looking at the puzzles that I'm doing now, and I'm like, I can do these. It's going to take a while, but I can do these as well.
That's cool.
You know, it occurs to me that there's this sort of a linear progression of easy to difficult of these sort of pseudo-programming games lately. The first one I noticed was the Magic Circle, then Pony Island, and then Quadrilateral Cowboy, and then this, which I would say is the hardest. So I gave those an ascending order from easiest to hardest.
There's quite a jump, I think, from Quadrilateral Cowboy up to Shenzhen I, too.
I imagine. Maybe the curve is like this.
Like, I played a little bit of Quadrilateral Cowboy. I don't think I could even touch this.
Quadrilateral Cowboy it's a vastly different game.
Yeah.
But playing the first and second quest or heist of Quadrilateral Cowboy, I think this is what I wanted out of that game. Although I wanted you to be able to do the Shenzhen I stuff in the scripter and then play the heist. But instead, it was like, you know, open door, wait 10.
Yeah.
You know, it's relatively simple stuff. But this is like Quadrilateral Cowboy scratched the itch a little bit because I was like, I'm sort of using programming 1 line at a time.
Right.
This is like you have to program. You actually have to do some programming stuff, which is really cool. And it's impossible to express, but like programming to some extent is almost like a puzzle game in and of itself. You're like, I have a blank canvas and I need to perform this function that does this. This is that in the game, and it's immensely satisfying when you actually manage to get it done. But there will be, I think, if you have absolutely no programming experience and you go into this thinking like, I'm going to learn how to make Pong, you're fucked. You're gonna be like, how do I make a number go from 1 to 10 and then start back at the beginning? You're gonna look at this like monstrous PDF and be like, I'm not reading this, and then you're done. But if you go in knowing you're gonna have to read a lot, and it is a little bit like studying, then I think you can get a lot out of this game.
Because you've got to learn, like go through the actual.
Here, I've got the PDF open because I was playing for the show. Let me scroll past the visa application form for the People's Republic of China.
Good.
And okay. So there's two kinds of interfaces in the game. Simple I/O values are continuous signal levels from 0 to 100 inclusive. Simple I/O pins are unmarked. Simple I/O is used for applications such as connecting a microcontroller to a simple input such as a button, switch, or microphone. X-bus values are discrete data packets from -999 to 999 inclusive. X-bus pins are marked with a yellow dot. You know, like, this is the kind of stuff. Multiply that by 41 pages.
No, thank you.
Shenzhen I is available on Steam right now. It's $13.49.
Fuckers out there.
10% off. Get in early. It's in early access. There is something to be said about Zachtronics in early access as well. I don't know how familiar you are with that.
The way they do it is basically they enter early access when they reach version 1.0, and then they just leave it there for like 2 months and are like, hey, like, if something's messed up, like, let us know and we'll fix it. And then when it's all refined, they come out with it in true form, like not early access.
Right. So it'll probably only be like 2 months at the most that they're actually in early access. But
yeah, and I don't think it's like adding more levels or anything like that. It's actually just like, you know, we're at version 1.0. Let us know if it's messed up, and then it'll be out.
Yep.
Out.
All right. So it's $13.49, normal price $15 Shenzhen I/O, and we're gonna go over to Outlast 2. Demo came out last week, currently available until November 1st, I believe. Nick and Mathis both had a chance to check that out. Nick, you want to tell me about Outlast 2's demo?
Sure. So, coming from the position of someone who's played the original Outlast, never finished it, but I have watched the ending and such, so it's got a lot of the same vibes as Outlast 1. It's got a good sense of physical presence. Your body feels like it has mass. The presentation quality seems very nice. The textures are all very well done. You start out in this, like, you're sliding down a mountain, your glasses fly off, and you, like, put them on. And it's the same premise as the original in that you have a camera with night vision, and you constantly have to find batteries for it. Only this time, I think you're a different person, as far as I can tell.
I think there's just no connection.
No connection at all, unless it's maybe tangentially story-related in a way we can't put together yet.
Yeah, it's possible.
And you are a reporter who likes to find the stories that nobody else wants to touch. And I believe it's either your girlfriend or your wife is captured by some group of religious zealots or cultists in this creepy kind of redneck town. And it looks like something out of Texas Chainsaw Massacre. And you hear her screaming off in the distance. And obviously, you're drawn to go find her. You start messing with your camera because it's very dark, and you realize there's like creepy people standing on the edges of the town watching you walk by. Not sure why they're not just attacking you, because they get emboldened later. And you make your way through a bunch of buildings and sort of a labyrinthian thing. And then you find your way to a very mysterious well where you are pulled in by a monster tongue or a demon's tongue that wraps around you and pulls you. And then you wake up at the bottom of the well, but you're actually in another reality where you're actually in a heating vent, crawling, and you find your way into a Catholic school.
Which is
like
believed to be your Catholic school from, like, your past.
Right, and then you find, I think it's supposed to be, like, your daughter there or something?
Daughter or friends, because, like, when you're going into the locker, and he's like, mentions them by name, and if you look at the picture, it's supposed to be him and his two friends. So it's
right.
Him back in 95, and I think it's, like, his friends, whether Lucy be the person he's with or whatever. You're trying to put it together, like, all right, am I in my own mind? Is this supernatural? But it's way more supernatural than the first one was, by a long shot.
At the very least, unless this is all happening in his head, and I really hope that's not the case, that would be really boring, there's some kind of shadow monster and, like, a pocket dimension going on, which actually I found to be a very interesting premise, especially paired with the fact that there's literal demons on crosses on fire outside.
Yeah.
So, like, I don't know where we're going with this at all, but the premise has me interested. Graphically, the presentation's lovely. The gameplay itself feels very much like the original in that it's a little bit hard to follow where you're supposed to go at times. The cues aren't the best. There seems to be a lot of scripting, and it's kind of a lot of it is just kind of running through haunted house kind of feeling. Ultimately, I don't think that'll be enough to stop it from being interesting if the story is as interesting as it came across in the demo. And I was a little saddened that they capped off the demo with just like, here's a moment of extreme gore for no reason.
Oh, yeah.
Like, instead of a moment of mystery that would have intrigued you, they're just like, all right, here's some gore. It's like, all right, horror games, we've seen gore before. We kind of get that they're going to be in it. No big deal. But I would say it was all right. It wasn't amazing. It wasn't terrible. I would certainly be interested in playing the actual game, and I guess that's its only really intended point. How did you feel about it, Mathis?
I'm a big bitch when it comes to horror games.
Hey, me
the
too.
First, yeah,
Bitch, high five.
I'm not.
Outlast.
I didn't
1
find
was,
it scary, actually.
Oh, so yeah, Outlast 1 for me, the first half was scary until I realized you could exploit the AI really easily, and then it became not scary.
Yep.
Yeah.
This one is a lot more. Well, the demo was a lot more supernatural. You're dealing with ghosts very quickly, or demons, or something, and it scared the ever living piss out of me. I screamed really loudly, and it wasn't like an overreaction. Like I fucking jumped out of my seat. It got me like 2 or 3 times really good. The gore doesn't bother me. But I like the fact that it's more supernatural right out the gate, because you can't really manipulate ghost AI like you can manipulate dumb people AI in like the Outlast one. One of the big problems with the first game was you could jump over tables, but they couldn't. So you could always just jump back and forth, and they just had to go around every time.
Mm-hmm.
This one doesn't have that issues. I liked it too. It's very intriguing. There's a lot of like religious imagery going on. There's a lot of like what's going on with your past. So maybe something's going on with your past. And the paranormal stuff made me jump really, really badly a couple of times. So I'm excited. I'm excited for it.
The thing I think that you're describing with Outlast 1 was what sticks out of my mind still every time I think about that game was the area with the doctor after he amputates your finger or something, and he's chasing you around, and it's just a big loop. Like, it's a big circle that you're running around in until you find the place you're supposed to go. But I got stuck there for like a fucking hour.
You and me on the same page.
God, it just that completely...
That's when I discovered. That's how I discovered you could exploit the AI because of that doctor. I'm like, oh, he's dumb and can't do these certain things.
Exactly.
Okay.
And like, it completely took me out of it. Not just then, but like from that point forward, I just got frustrated.
I wasn't scared anymore.
Yeah. It was just.
You know the flooded basement, like near the very beginning?
Yeah.
There's a box you can crawl into, and I would just kite all the people down that hallway and sit in the box, and they would just run around the box, then run on the other side and run back around. It's like, come on, guys. This isn't going to be scary if they don't actually react in a way that makes any sense.
Yeah, so it sounds like, though, maybe I don't know if they even knew that was an issue, but it sounds like they've gone a different route to where it now may not be a problem anymore, I guess.
We can't say, because it was extremely linear.
Yeah.
And there wasn't hardly any encounter anyway. There was very few things going on.
The biggest jump scare, is coming. Like, you can't avoid it. You know what's happening. You're in a hallway, and they lock all the doors, and they basically just force you to run up and down the hallway until the jump scare happens. You know it's coming, you just don't know when. And when it happens, like, because I knew it was coming, I was so tense and built up. I'm like, when's it gonna happen? When's it gonna happen? And then it happened, and I like screamed. But it was
jump scare is a viable option to take you out of physical space. Like that, they build that into the geometry in your mind, like the virtual geometry of the level. It's like, all right, there are no options anymore, so my only option is to wait until something happens.
Yeah.
So what are my options? Walk up and down. That's really boring.
The waiting gets to me though. Like, 'cause if I know it's coming and it's taking however X amount of time, I'm more on edge by the time it happens because I've been expecting it. I don't know. It's weird.
I think you just naturally have a more analytical than emotional approach to it, Nick, which may very well be what takes you out of it often.
I don't get scared really by games, so I just kind of see the gameplay mechanics they're putting forward and like what they're trying to say.
Right.
And when all their appeals are just sort of emotional, like there's not really anything there.
Yeah.
It's just waiting then.
Yeah.
Well, there you go.
I'm excited for it, though.
Outlast 2 demo is available. You can just go download that right off their website. Like everybody's got access to that at the moment.
You can get it on Steam.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
There you go. It's easy enough. Cool. All right. Well, that's going to lead us into everybody's favorite segment. It's Ask Roundtable, the weekly segment wherein you send your questions to roundtableyt@gmail.com. We do our best to answer them. This week's question comes from Liam. Or sorry, not from Liam, from Dale. Liam was some other guy. Dale asks, long-time listener, first-time caller, do you feel a developer should be freely able to tweak the vision and change the mechanics of their game post-release? And if so, should this have a time frame? He's specifically thinking about games like Isaac and Dark Souls, where considerable changes are regularly implemented, which can have big impacts on the game and enjoyment, depending on the gamer. Lastly, if a developer has intentions of changing their game post-release, should they call this out as a pseudo game as a service up front, pseudo game as a service up front, so consumers know what to potentially expect? Main question here: do you feel a developer should be freely able to tweak and adjust a game post-release, and do you feel this needs a time frame associated with it? Anybody?
I think it's like, I think the developer has 100% agency, like within reason. Like I would be, like minor nerfs and buffs in stuff like Isaac or Hearthstone doesn't really bother me at all. Even if I disagree with it, I'm like, you change like one little grain of sand on the whole beach of this game.
Yeah.
But if they were like, hey, we just released a patch that turns Isaac into like a 2D shoot 'em up like Contra or something like that, I'd be like, that's pretty weird. But I also feel like that's like outside of the bounds of realism. But I wanted to at least go to that territory first, just because I know people in the comments are going to be like, well, what if they just removed every item or something like that? So, I mean, I feel like they should be able to tweak. I don't think players have any ownership over a game, and it's kind of a bummer for me when people are like, oh, they ruined it because they like changed one single item because it caused a problem in the game. Maybe the solution isn't perfect, but like I almost can't think of a situation in which a game was good and then it got ruined by post-release support.
Well, Mathis had a pretty good example of that in one of his recent Judge Mathis episodes, right, with the Star Wars MMO.
Oh yeah, that was a long time ago.
Yeah.
They butchered that game real hard.
Mm-hmm. What was that called?
I feel like that's such an Star Wars Galaxies.
That's right,
I feel like that was such an outlier though, because they were like pre-WoW MMO doing their own thing, had a very loyal base, and then WoW came out and they were just like, we want WoW money.
Yeah.
Let's turn this game into WoW, and they just couldn't. I mean, that's old. Like the game died because of it.
Right.
And then they came out with KOTOR Online or whatever it was. And that was Star Wars WoW, basically. It happens, I guess, but I guess it just happens very, very rarely. I wish they would. I'm with Ryan, I think. Like, as long as they don't ruin the game, I'm down with it. I hope, like, fingers crossed, as an example, Mafia 3 gets some major changes in its post-release patches that really make the game good. So I'm down with it. Yeah, as long as they don't change what the game is, I'm fine with it. Usually it's not noticeable, too.
Yeah. Nick, how do you feel?
I was trying to look through my Steam library and find an example of that, and I guess I can't think of one now, but I'm sure we've come up with one in the past that's been ruined by post-game support or post-release support. Yeah, I guess going to where Ryan went with the extreme idea of, like, here's game X and it is now actually game Y, that's the only thing that would really be bothersome. As long as they kind of retain the general vision of the original release, I mean, it falls on just don't be a dick, right? Like, the developer can do what they want, but people are going to get kind of attached to the concept they bought, technically, and they have the right to do whatever they want to it, but also, like, maybe respect their money a little bit. And I don't think too many people don't.
Yeah.
At least to the degree that it would matter to talk about.
It's certainly not an issue at the moment. I think this would be like a different conversation if we had examples to pin of, developers that, basically went wild and lost their fan bases completely because of their ridiculous decisions. Like, we don't have a lot of instances of that at the moment.
Which is good.
Yeah, definitely a good thing, obviously. So that there's no real need for this sort of limitation, although I could certainly see like a hypothetical scenario in which maybe you would consider this realistic necessity. But right now, I think it's pretty fair to say that if they made the game, they should be free to change the game how they see fit. And I don't even think it's necessarily an anti-consumer position. I was going to harp on you, Ryan, because, obviously that's the thing. But it's really not. It's just sort of the developer, they made the game. They have free reign over whatever version of the game they feel is going to be best in the future. And I especially...
CSGO.
Yeah.
Chat said CSGO.
Okay, so we got the one now. But, like, in general, I think we benefit for the most part from their continued ability to improve and expand upon their base idea. In fact, like, that's sort of the central component of early access at this point. That would not exist were we to try to implement some sort of time frame upon developers' ability to tweak their vision. Although I guess that was sort of the conversation we were having the other day about how long folks should be allowed to stay within early access bounds. So there's sort of a weird conversation we had there, I suppose. But in a general sense, I don't think really that any sort of limitations should be imposed there. I think we kind of all agree about that.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
All right, cool. Well, Dale, thank you very much for the question. If you've got a question you'd like to ask, feel free to send that over to roundtableyt@gmail.com. We'll do our best to answer those every single week. Time for everybody's favorite segment after that favorite segment. It's Nick's Weird Games. Nick's Weird Games.
Yeah.
Every single week we try to guess a weird game from Nick's catalog of weird games. No theme song suggested in today's email either. Let's see. What's hip? What's cool with the kids these days, man? What do they got?
It's a great way to ensure that I do not know what it is.
What's your...
What about like all along the Watchtower? Since I'm playing a lot of Mafia 3, I got like old 60s rock in my 60s, 70s.
I only like, it's just like, you know, it's time for another Nick's Weird Game.
Mhm.
That's just that.
I could be okay with that. We can go into next.
Yeah, but I only know
that.
2 lines.
Yeah, but we can just do it.
I refuse. It's a dilution of my brand.
Okay.
Nick's Weird Games. Do it.
Oh, that's perfect. Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So that'd be like,
I'm glad you're accepting this after all.
this is Vinu Malesh. It's my life. Nick's
Oh,
Weird Games.
God, yeah.
My
okay.
coin.
So it'd be like, Nick's Weird Games came out for the PS2. Nick's Weird Games on Vietnamese PS2s. Nick's Weird Games, they're all 4 out of 10s. Hey! Games Reactor gave this a 6. What do you want me to say to you? I am a first person. I am a dungeon crawler. I am a strategy game. I have a chibi lover. I was published by Koei. They were bought out by Tecmo. I am a Nick's Weird Game. I guess that would be the end.
Very,
That was
very
great.
good, bad
stuff.
game.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. I am a very
good
Nick's Weird
bad
Game.
game.
Yeah.
I feel like you should let that one have an hour in your off time and maybe
I
work
think
it
so,
in
too.
somewhere else because I think there's really good potential on that one.
Oh, that's so good.
All right, are you ready to play Nick's Weird Games?
Oh,
First of
I've
all,
never
close
been
your
more
chats.
ready, man. I got prepped from
All right,
that.
Chat is gone. I'm ready. Let's do it.
Also, I just thought the irony of us not realizing CSGO about the thing we were just talking about, that was so good. I had to just mention it.
It was, okay,
All right.
that was not... never mind. Fuck it. Here we go. Nick's Weird Games.
All right, today we actually don't have a game for PS2, as unfortunately inappropriate as that is. It's a PS3 game today,
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
and it is a game that was developed by Game Republic, published by Sony Computer Entertainment. This came out October 2007 in North America, June 2007 in Japan.
Okay.
Gamer.
And it is an action role-playing game where characters are controlled in third person, and they explore their surroundings and engage in combat. So first, just think about that a little bit before we go any further. RPG, action, third person, exploration, combat. Alright.
What is exploration combat?
Yeah,
From the start of the game, there are 2 lead protagonists. There's a young woman and a journalist. They both have different stories that intertwine.
I feel like I know.
I
This
know
is driving me
this.
nuts. I feel like I know
Oh,
this
fuck.
game.
I have to be very careful here because I think there's a lot that'll give this away. You've probably seen this one before. It's not quite as obscure as some.
That tipped me off, though. That plot line.
Intertwining.
Intertwining young woman and journalist.
Yeah, it's the story of Outlast too.
Oh, yeah.
That's what it is. Outlast.
All right.
I
Can
feel
you get a little...
No.
Give me a little more.
I feel like Math is about to just get it right now,
No,
so I'm
because
just kind
this
of
sounds
waiting a second.
so
Come on.
familiar. Like I feel like I know exactly. Like
Help
I
me
almost
out.
can picture the. Is it like really? Like, this is a dumb question, but is it like really pretty?
I'm not going to tell you because that's too
Fuck.
telling for this particularly.
Like
This
go, keep
game
going.
is set in Ireland and features Irish mythology.
Oh.
Is it Oh
Here
god,
we go.
I put this game up
Here
on
we
GameStop
go.
a million times. I know it's a purple cover. I swear it's a purple cover.
Is it a
Is it,
purple cover, Nick?
Fuck.
I want to just give it to him because I know he knows it. He just hasn't thought of the name yet.
No, it's like the tip of the tongue. I can picture like stupid, but I can like picture. I can see the cover. I can see the
because
word.
There was like 30 PS3 games that we ever put away on the shelves. They're always the same ones.
Folklore. Folklore. It's got to be. It's folklore.
Yeah,
folklore.
It's folklore.
Hey, all right.
Hey, we did it.
Purple cover, beautiful art. Yes, thank you.
Nice
Oh
job.
my fucking god, that game. Did I rent that game? That game I saw so much.
It was one of the very few games that came out around launch that
Chat
was
must
like
have
not
been freaking
awful.
out. Like, must have been yelling.
I mean, I heard mixed things about it, to be honest. Some people seem to like it somewhat. It's also very obscure, and like the gameplay apparently was a bit convoluted. But it was kind of pretty, so people gave it a pass for the most part, I guess.
Yeah, I remember.
Yeah, you got it.
Like 7s and shit, but not like. Games Republic,
like
you said, right?
What's
that name, Games Republic, you said, is the developer?
It's Games Republic, Game Republic.
Game Republic. I want to see the logo.
Let's see who got it in chat first. I think there's probably quite a few here. How far back can we go?
Do they not exist anymore?
The first one I see before my chat gets cut off, there may have been more, but I see Samurai John 94. So congrats.
Hell yeah. Well done, Samurai John.
Nice job.
All right. Well, if y'all saw the docket at the onset of the show today, there was actually the inclusion of a potential Twitch chat Q&A, a little segment at the end here, and I think we're gonna hold off on that. But it is something that I think we'll incorporate in the future, maybe just like 10-20 minute segments of a live Twitch chat Q&A. Which we're doing the show live, we might as well use the chat, right? Might as well do that. So that sounds like fun. We might do that in the future. For now, we will say thank you guys very much for watching this episode of Roundtable Live, here live on twitch.tv/Roundtable Podcast. If you're following the channel, you'll be notified every Friday at 3 p.m. Pacific, 6 p.m. Eastern Time when we go live here. If you're not following the channel, go ahead and do that, twitch.tv/Roundtable Podcast. You can also follow us on Twitter at RoundtablePC. You can catch the show discussion over on roundtablepodcast.reddit.com. And you can rate the show 5 stars on iTunes and check out the VODs over on our YouTube channels. We want to thank our Patreon supporters as well over on patreon.com/roundtable. Thank you guys so much for keeping your pledges alive over there. We want to especially thank those of you at the $20 tier and above, including Logan Ray, Smurfette, Justin, Mythscara, Mediocrities, Positron, Brizzle Brip, Eric Schooley, Christopher Flagg, Oren Saltzman, Mavia, Greenlight, David Schmitz, Colby Klein, Super Monoman, Scotty119, Jonathan Graham, General Crunk, and Julian Abelsgaard. Thank you guys very much for supporting over there on patreon.com/roundtable. And thank you very much for watching. We will see you back here next week, October 14th, here on Twitch. Bye.
Bye.
Later.
Thanks, guys. See you later.
Woo.